pleasure.
Sorry, just before we start, Alex, I said that we are going to be recording the meeting, so it'll go up on YouTube for those that are unable to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, as always. I always find these first meetings, whether it's SF Grid Club or Sacramento Grid Club, it's hard to wrap my head around that football season is here. You blink and in the middle of basketball season and boom, you're in football season. So we're excited for the first game this Saturday. I would love to have been able to share so many updates on, who the starting quarterback is, possibly injuries, but we got a UC Davis guy on here, so got to keep those insider informations a little bit close to the chest. So we're excited.
I'm a reporter. I'm not a UC Davis guy. I
Got
already know everything you're asking, though.
Well, we're excited for Saturday. Great opportunity for us to go out there and compete. I know a lot of those guys up at practice, I go up there pretty regularly, are kind of getting antsy after hitting each other for the past 4 months, and they're looking to hit an opponent rather than a teammate. So excited for the team to go out there and compete, hopefully get all the kinks out prior to us going to Auburn. As Gary mentioned, there's a large group of folks going out to Auburn. So if any of you are going out, please look for me at whether that's, some events that are taking place in Atlanta or the tailgate prior hosted by the Cal Athletics Fund. So with that being said, we are excited about going to the ACC across the athletic department, not just football, but the first program to compete with the ACC patch on their jerseys was women's soccer. So we're already in it. We're in the thick of it. So yeah, we're looking forward to Saturday's game. Not too much to really, not too many updates to really provide.
Well, I will provide this update that isn't going to really spill any beans or anything, but Alex invited me up to the practice that we had here in Sacramento last week, and I watched the team, and all I can tell you is I've seen practices before that the team to me just looked really sharp. They look crisp. They looked different than I've seen them in the past in practices. They just really looked they looked pumped up. They looked like they were ready to play. And it just, I don't know, it just seemed a little bit different. And I hope that bodes well for our season.
Yeah, there's been a lot of battles taking place across fall camp, whether that's, quarterback battle, offense versus defense. It's always hard when you're at practice and, the offense makes a great play and you're excited because then you got to think about, well, was that because the defense made a mistake or the defense makes a stop? And you're like, does that mean that we're having some troubles on the offensive side of the ball? So excited with the battle that took place between or still taking place between Fernando and Chandler. Both are very well experienced, and there's a lot of programs across the country that are in a much different situation than we are. We have two great quarterbacks that both have FBS football experience, fighting for a starting spot. So I'm sure there is a world in which we possibly see both of them this Saturday. But they could both sling it really well.
Anybody have any questions for Alex?
I have.
Yeah, I see something in chat here from Joe. Is the Cal Athletic Department generally satisfied with the ACC scheduling decisions for this first season? Are there any concerns regarding travel distances, back-to-back away games, etc.?
Well, the good thing is we don't have any back-to-back away games. I think a huge piece about moving to the ACC was Jim getting onto the scheduling committee for football. Was able to kind of lobby for us in there and get us to a point where we're not going to Wake Forest and playing them on a Friday, coming back home for, 3-4 days, and then going all the way to Tallahassee. So I think we, as a whole staff, it's it's a good schedule. Obviously has its challenges in there, but I think it bodes well for us where, we're playing a road game and then we come back, play a home game, or we play a road game and then we come back and have a bye. So I think it worked out well. Are donations better made to AD or Cal Legends? Great question. That is an all-time question. The way I talk about it, and I have these conversations on a daily basis, is we are very donor centric at Cal Athletics and the Cal Athletics Fund. I think it all comes down to preference of donor. Certain sports have priorities. Justin's number one priority is NIL dollars. So if you want to support Justin, his number one priority is supporting the collective. Other folks, when it comes to saying, hey, here's this sum of money, what should I do with it? I think it comes down to donors' discretion, right? When you talk about supporting the athletic department versus supporting the Legends and the California Legends Collective. Now, when I say versus, they're not colliding pieces, like they're in alignment. So when you support when you support the collective, I think a big piece of that goes into retaining our current players. When you think about collectives, the big misconception is that we're just going out and acquiring players, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, a lot of these programs, they want to keep their players, and that is one of the most important things. Now, when you support the athletic department, you are supporting the student athlete experience and the growth of that student athlete. So I think it goes not hand in hand, but it's really preference of the donor of what they want to see. Do you want to make sure Jaden Knott stays here? Then the collective. If you want to make sure that player X on team Y grows in their sport, then the athletic department's the place to be. How are ticket sales going for the Davis game? I actually don't have that number. I would like to assume that, there's a lot of factors that go into the Davis game. Labor Day weekend, FCS opponent, first game of the year. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement in the building. I don't know about the crowd size, but I know folks are going to pack a punch for however many are there. How is Fernando looking through camp in terms of ball security? That is the most important thing of a quarterback, right? So last year, I think the number was, I don't want to put him on blast if I'm wrong here, but there was I think 10 interceptions and the ball was on the ground a couple of times or a few times when it came to fumbles. He's looked good when it comes to camp, throwing interceptions. Now, take that into consideration that we are not hitting our quarterbacks during camp. So fumbles aren't really a thing when it comes to quarterback play in camp because they're not getting hit. They have time to get the ball out. So he's shown a lot of growth. I'll tell you that when it comes to arm strength and progressing through and progression through the play on moving to option A, B, or C, or whatever the case may be. So shown a lot of growth, been able to sling it really well. I haven't seen too many interceptions from him this fall camp. Weather adjustments, how? Yeah, that's a great question. At this time right now, our main focus is actually hot weather adjustments. I think we'll cross the cold weather bridge when we get there. Going to Auburn and Tallahassee next month is the main reason why we went up to Sacramento to practice, is to get that heat exposure. There were a couple of players that were interviewed after, talking about how great it was to have the feeling of like their cleats felt like they were melting. I think that's what we need, right? When you're in Berkeley, it's 75 degrees and sunny Monday through Sunday. So, and maybe you get some overcast and it gets into the mid 60s. So getting out to Sacramento was helpful. We've been making that a heat adjustment just so guys know what they should be doing when we're out there in Auburn and Tallahassee. So I'm not too sure what will take place with the cold weather adjustments, but I think the good thing is sometimes it gets pretty chilly in Berkeley as well. But I will say I went to a football game last November, a bowl game, around it was December, around Christmas in Dallas. It was freezing. So yeah, we got to prep for that when we go to SMU in November because that wind cuts right through you.
Take
When
a
we'll,
couple more. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to take a couple more questions. I think we need to move forward a little bit.
yeah. I'll answer this last one. How are season ticket sales going? People excited to see new teams with joining the ACC, or people mourning the loss of decades of rivalry and tradition? Great question. I think you can mourn and be excited. I grew up Pac-10, Pac-12. Hated to see what happened, but don't get me wrong. I'm excited to have Miami come to town. I'm excited to go to Tallahassee. So I think you can justify both. How are season tickets going? Honestly, I give the most praise to our season to our ticket sales staff. They crushed it. I want to see
Join the meeting.
I want to say they went up quite a number of points when it comes to renewals, and then selling new business as well. So there's going to be a lot of new faces in Berkeley for football games, and a lot of familiar faces as well. So excited for it. There's going to be a lot of butts in seats, as I like to say.
All right, Alex, thank you.
Yeah.
Always good to get the report. And if a couple of the other questions are in chat, if you'd like to, you can always answer them in chat too,
Yeah.
if you'd like. So we're going to move forward now a little bit. It's been a while since we have had an opposition sports writer with us. And so
I'm just a sports writer. I'm neutral.
You're neutral, yeah, but we talk about opposition, just an expert on the on our.
Let me show you my shirt. Let me show you my shirt.
Oh, go
I don't know
Bears.
if you can see that.
I think there's a lot of tears streaming down our face right now.
I'm a Bear son. My dad went there, and I'm a Bear dad. My oldest son went there. So,
Fantastic. So Bob Dunning, I stumbled across Bob a few years ago here in Sacramento and reached out to him. You're now writing for a Substack, I believe.
yes.
And but got a bigger history with the Davis Enterprise. If I remember correctly, 54 years covering the Aggies.
Right. I started in kindergarten.
Right. I was going to say you started like shortly right after birth. But yeah, so you've got the experience. So Bob, what can you tell us about the Aggies and kind of your take on the game for this weekend?
Well, they got Tim Plow out of the transfer portal. Came to Davis from Berkeley, 1 year at Cal, and he speaks so highly of Justin Wilcox. He gets emotional when he talks about Justin Wilcox. He says, Tim he was an Aggie quarterback. Wasn't a superstar. Wasn't one of the long line of Ken O'Brien type quarterbacks, but he played here. And then he was at Boise State as an offensive coordinator and got fired in the middle of the season. And, kind of a really tough public flogging, if you will. And he said Justin really reached out to him, told him come by, eventually gave him a job. And he feels like he's part of the Bear family and says nothing but good things about Justin. That said, Davis is actually his dream job. He quarterbacked here. His wife went to school here. They've just bought a house in Davis. They got 3 little boys, and he's really excited to be at Davis. He says for the long haul. Of course, they all say that when they get hired. But it's obvious. This is they used to call these body bag games, and that became politically incorrect. So I don't know. They just call them paycheck games. The Aggies are getting $675,000 to play the Bears, and Tim told me on Monday. He says, hey, we're getting paid to go there. What does that mean? It means we're supposed to lose. I think they have to give the check back if they win. But the Aggies did go down to Stanford about 20 years ago, not quite. And when Walt Harris was there and cost Walt his job, the Aggies were down 17-0, came back and won the game 20-17 with 8 seconds left in the game on a touchdown pass. They beat Tulsa a couple of years ago. They routinely beat San Jose State and UOP back when UOP had a team. They beat Walt Harris when he was at UOP too. So they kind of got Walt Harris after him. They have a tremendous running back and a guy named Lan Larison, who he had a few FBS offers, but no great amount of money. He's a rodeo cowboy from Idaho, from Caldwell, Idaho. They have a seasoned quarterback, Miles Hastings. This will be his 4th year starting. He had a great campaign 2 years ago. Was a little off last year. They're hoping he resumes where he was before, almost 70% completion percentage. Really smart kid, which so many Davis quarterbacks are. And there's a lot of, Dan Hawkins was here for 7 years as head coach, the former, Colorado and Boise State head coach. And this is a different style. Tim's what, they call him a player's coach, whatever that means. And the players have really taken to Tim Plow. How that will show up on the field, who knows? In 20, it was actually 19, the Aggies went down and actually led the Bears in the second half. And Cal came back and won 27-13. And then 2 years ago, it was 34-13. Cal's a 21-point favorite, depending on which book you're looking at. And I think that's just about right. The Aggies are probably untested on defense. They lost they lost one of them, Teddy Buchanan, to Cal, and they lost Chuba Maya to Arizona. Two guys that played a number of years at Davis. They're superstars, and Teddy's. I don't know if he's going to start at Cal or not, but he's a good one. So I think they're going to have a heck of a time stopping Jaden Ott. That's just you see that so often in FBS, FCS, and I wish they would get rid of those designations. When you see those matchups, it's usually the O-line dominates, maybe not so much early, but as the game wears on, the FBS teams wear them down, and the run games really get going. And I think Jaden Ott could look at a 200-yard game against the Aggies, especially in third and fourth quarters when it really matters. Davis will put some points up, but they're a little untested at wide receiver as well. They do have a seasoned quarterback, but he's not a gunslinger. They'll throw to their backs a lot. And like I say, Lan Larison he's a great back, a little undersized, but if he breaks loose, nobody's going to catch him. He's that fast. They went up to Oregon State last year. The Aggies did and lost 55-7 at Reser Stadium, and they just got overwhelmed up there. And I don't think this team is any better than that team.
Anybody have any questions for Bob? Well, I do. Bob, what do you think is the kind of the most interesting matchup this Saturday?
I think it's will Miles Hastings. He's not real mobile. He's a little bit out of the Ken O'Brien mold. He's not big like Ken was, but he's not a scrambler. He's not gonna break loose for 10 yards on 3rd and 8 when he gets trapped. So is he going to have the time to throw the ball? And he's not a downfield threat. They don't have receivers that are downfield threats, and he doesn't have the big arm. So are the Aggies going to be able to clear enough holes to get Lan Larison through them? And my guess is no. It's interesting when you look at the history of this game. In the 30s, Cal shut the Aggies out 6 straight times, and is now 11-0 against UC Davis. We used to be known as the University Farm. Mm-hmm. The Bears, I think in the 30s, they put the Aggie offense and defense on separate buses, and the offense just never made it to Berkeley. I think they got stuck in the Caldecott Tunnel or something and never made it to Berkeley. But I'm afraid it's going to be a little bit of that, and they'll take the 675 and come home and get ready for Big Sky play. Mm-hmm. Big Sky is a tough league. It's a good league. Giovanni McCoy, who started Idaho, is now the starting quarterback at Oregon State this year. You know, the Big Sky has some, you know, some really, really good teams and some really good players.
So Richard and Joe are sort of kind of on the same cosmic wavelength here. Great minds think alike. So they're basically asking, you know, how are the Aggies going to do the rest of the season in the conference and just overall?
Well, you know, there are four teams ranked in the Big Sky. Montana is 2, Montana State is 3, Idaho is 7, and Sac State is 10. And the Aggies play all 4 of them. It's a 12-team league, so you miss 3 teams. You play eight team schedule, and of course you can't play yourself. So they play all 4, and they play 3 of them right in a row to finish the season: Montana, Montana State, and Sac State. Sac State was a real power when Troy Taylor was there. They've fallen off though. They're not. They don't have that offensive mind that Troy brought to the program, but they're still formidable. Idaho is a rising power. The 2 Montanas back to back are going to decide how UC Davis does. The rest of the league is soft. In Northern Arizona, Northern Colorado, Cal Poly, they're soft. You know, it is not a top to bottom great league, but in the top 5 or 6 teams, it's pretty darn good. And can stand up to anybody other than North Dakota State and South Dakota State. And those are 2 big games this weekend. South Dakota State's playing Oklahoma State, and North Dakota State's playing Coach Prime.
So do you think that year that Tim Plow had at Cal as tight end coach is going to give give him some good information about game planning for this weekend?
Oh yeah, you know, I think a little bit. You know, it's easy to kind of overrate that. I think he's got bigger problems being a first-year coach, which will more than offset any little insight he might have gotten as being tight ends coach at Cal for 1 year. But it certainly does. But Justin Wilcox is well aware of what Tim knows. So Tim will probably see something on the first play he's never seen before and look over at Justin and go, "How'd you do that to me? Why'd you do that to me?"
Well, we hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, anybody else have questions for Bob?
You know, I will say that I wrote it in my column yesterday. You know, they rated all the best stadiums in the country. ESPN did, and I think Memorial Stadium in Berkeley, and I've said it many times, is the #1 venue for college football. I just think it's a beautiful stadium and a beautiful setting in Strawberry Canyon. It's the first place I ever saw a big-time football game as a 5-year-old with my dad, and it's a special place in my heart.
It is for all of us here. Thank you for saying that, and I don't think anybody here is going to disagree with you. I just have a funny feeling on that. But anyways, so Bob, we do have a little bit of a tradition here for the.
Is this going to be hazing?
What's that?
Is this going to be hazing?
Oh, it's much worse than that.
Okay.
So we have a one final question that we always ask, and you have to answer it. You can't talk your way out of it. What is your prediction for the final score?
41-14.
41-14. Oh, quick with that one. All right. Well, we would be happy with that. We would be happy.
It'll be an upset. Cal will win.
Okay. All right, Bob. Thanks so much for being with us. I appreciate
it. It was a joy. Thank you.
And good luck this weekend. Hope it's a good game with no injuries. That's always the big thing.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on now. So here's our tradition of the final score question, but we also have another tradition here, and that is our first meeting of the season before the first game, that we have Jim McGill with us. Jim, gosh, I don't even know how many years you've been coming to these opening meetings. I'm guessing maybe 20 or more. I don't know, maybe. But it has become a tradition. And Jim has always followed the Bears through practice, and always gives us a lot of good information on what we can expect. So Jim, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and tell us, what can we expect this year from the Bears?
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. So
Oh, now we can't hear you. You're muted.
how about now?
There you go.
Okay. I just can't see myself in this this mode, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. We
So I
can't
had a
see
chance to
either.
go to every spring practice but two, and every fall camp practice plus one of the Sacramento ones. So I have a really good handle on what they look like during that period of time. I was very optimistic early in fall camp because I like a lot of the pieces they brought in through the portal, and some of the young recruits too are showing really well. The offense seemed to be moving pretty well, which was one of my main questions coming into the season. But I'm a little less bullish because neither Rodgers or Mendoza really took the bull by the horns and made a clear case to be a starter for this season. So I think they're both going to play a decent amount on Saturday. Hopefully one will stand out and make a clear case for himself then. There's also been some injuries. I don't think any of them are season ending, but we're likely to see several starters not participate on Saturday. Doesn't make me worried about them winning the game, but you'd like to see some of the impact guys back full strength for when you play teams like Auburn and Florida State on the road for sure, and some of the other tougher games during the season. I like the talent they added quite a bit. They have better depth, I think, than I've ever seen at Cal, even if the team isn't going to be the best team we've seen at Cal in decades. It's a team that should be very competitive and be able to withstand injuries like they're having to deal with right now. I like the way the defense has improved significantly. That was a real weak point last year, especially the pass defense, and they've brought in a lot of really good portal JC and prep guys to shore that up, and that's going to allow them to play man to man, which will allow them to in turn play a more aggressive upfield defense, which is something they've really lacked in the last few years. So overall, I'm optimistic. I came into fall camp predicting 8 wins, and I think they can still do that. If everything breaks right, I think they could get to 9. But if they keep having injuries and guys don't come back at full strength, and teams in the ACC are better than we think because they had a lot of good portal recruiting themselves, I could see 7 wins. But honestly, that would be a disappointment to me.
Sorry, I forgot I was muted there. Questions for Jim? Okay, well, once again, I'll start out. You know,
I got a question.
here, Jim, at the beginning of the season, our kicking game was quite the disappointing adventure. How do our kickers look this year?
Well, transfer from North Carolina has the strongest leg I think we've ever seen at Cal. We've had some really good kickers over the years, but I don't think any have a stronger leg than him. He has a legit 60-yard capability, and he's accurate and consistent. So that could be a game changer. Last year, when they finally figured things out and brought in the backup redshirt kicker, they were able to make field goals, but they kept them short, and they risked it on 4th down situations when they were around the 50-yard field goal range area because they just didn't feel like it was a good enough chance that it would be 3 points for them, and they didn't want to turn it over on down. So that's going to be a weapon for sure, and it doesn't just play out in field goal kicking. It plays out in kickoffs because I don't think we'll ever forget the Oregon State game. I think their average starting position was 40 yards plus because we could not kick the ball deep enough to prevent returns. And he gets it into the end zone or out of the end zone the majority of the time. So that'll help as well. So that's a big boost.
Oh, we've got some questions in chat. And Jim, I don't know if we can't see you either. I don't know if your camera's on or if you're having trouble getting both audio and video. But question from Garth, who's joining us from Colorado. He's on the board of the Rocky Mountain chapter. So welcome, Garth. Garth is asking, what is the best new addition to the team from the portal?
I really like Teddy Buchanan at middle linebacker playing with Kedu Olave. I think they're going to be really good up the middle. Chandler Rogers at quarterback could obviously have a big impact if he ends up taking over the starting job. But even if he doesn't, having a capable backup that's ready to start at any point is a huge asset. Obviously, we saw that last year. I really like a lot of the transfer portal receivers. Tobias Merriweather, Keon Grays, Mikey Matthews, Jonathan Brady. All those guys are very productive guys that have special assets that can really make a difference on this offense this year, either stretching the field or being able to run the types of routes we weren't very good at in years past. Those guys will help a lot. And at defensive back, Marcus Harris is a lockdown corner. He's going to play opposite Noel Williams, and he's a big reason why they've been able to play man-to-man coverage all spring and fall, which is something they haven't been able to do in years. And he's probably the fastest guy on the team too, which really helps. Those are some of the guys that really stand out. I know some of the other DBs have a chance to start too, like Josiah Wagner from Oklahoma or Ryan Yates from LSU. Those guys were 4-star recruits that transferred right after their freshman year to Cal, so they've got a lot of eligibility left. There's a lot of other guys too. I mean, they added some significant depth. There's 50% new scholarship players this year. So literally half the 85 roster of scholarship players is new portal transfers or prep recruits or JC guys. So expect to see a lot of different personnel this year that are going to make a big impact.
All right, great. Dave is asking, the offensive line has been an issue in recent years. Last year was a step up. How does the group look this year?
That's a good question. I liked the way they looked early in fall camp. They played the same 5 guys and had some consistency, but they started to mix in some of the portal transfer guys who I think are an upgrade in talent, but they're a little bit of a work in progress on how they look playing together. Rush Reimer is a guy that's probably going to start at left guard. He's somebody I could have mentioned in potential impact guys. And McDonald from Coastal Carolina playing at center. He's probably the most aggressive guy on the line, and he gets the defense kind of riled up in practice sometimes. So that's a good thing. So plugging those guys in helps. Sioape Vadakani was injured early in camp, and I don't think he'll be back for the opener. When he's back, the line will definitely be better. But while he's out, it'll be Bastian Swinney, who had a few starts last year, most likely starting at right guard. And then Nick Morrow is a redshirt freshman who was a gray shirt his first year. So he's actually going into his 3rd year. He's been out of high school for a while. He played tight end in high school, and they've been converting him over to offensive tackle the last 2 years and beefing him up. And he's looked really good in spring and fall. You just don't know how he'll hold up until he's seen live game action. But so far, he looks like a real promising guy that could hold down that position for quite a while. So, and then TJ Session, who looked really rough his first year, had a really good year last year, and he's built on that. And he's the clear leader of this offensive line. So I think the biggest question is, how long is it going to take them to really gel as a unit, particularly with one of their big starters out? And I'd like to also see a little bit more consistency with the snapping. The snapping's been a little bit sloppy in camp here and there, and part of that's because they've played 3 different guys at center, just trying to see what the best mix of guys is. So that's kind of a rundown with the offensive line.
All right, great. Joe's asking, do you think the change in conferences alone will help Cal to become at least minimally bowl eligible, if not even better?
I think the conference change will help them. I don't necessarily know that top to bottom it's an easier conference, and I don't know that a bowl game is necessarily the minimum. I think if they don't make a bowl game, it's going to be completely unacceptable considering it's Wilcox's 8th year and considering that they've got the talent to certainly make at least a minor bowl game. But I think you've got three conference games that will be on the tougher side to me. Florida State on the road and North Carolina State and Miami at home. Beyond that, if this team plays to its capabilities, all of those games are certainly winnable. But sometimes you never know which Cal team is going to show up. So you got to have that caveat too. We want to see how this completely different group of guys comes together and gels. But overall, looking at each of the position groups, there's some real promising clues that it could be a good year if they don't continue to suffer a bunch of injuries to starting guys.
So, Elizabeth, I think that's a really good question here. Is the team able to build team unity and cohesion with players coming and going each year? So, great question with the transfer portal.
I think that causes a problem on a lot of programs, especially ones that have a lot of transfers like Cal does. But they do a really good job of bringing in the right type of guy, and these guys legit really like hanging around each other. And it's not just by position group; it's by offense and defense and overall team cohesion. They do a lot of things on the side together, and you don't have a lot of egos. A lot of these guys that came in the portal, they were recruited by Cal initially, and they really liked what they saw, but they opted for another program for whatever reason. It could be that they wanted one that was, more highly rated, that maybe got more publicity, whatever the case. And when they found out the atmospheres at those programs really wasn't what they were looking for, they came back to what they saw when they were being recruited, and they love it here. I mean, I've talked to almost every one of the new guys on the roster, and they just love it here. So to answer your question, it could be something really tricky, but they've managed it really well.
All right, great. Dave asking, pass rush was terrible last year, got better towards the end of the season. Do you think they will be able to improve the pass rushing this season?
Yeah, I do. A lot of it's because they're going to be able to play man defense with the better defensive back unit. So that's allowed them to sort of change the philosophy of the guys up the middle, just engaging and holding gaps and holding their blocks, to penetrating more. That helps collapse the pocket and make it a lot easier for the edge guys to get in. Carlton and Reese have looked real good in camp, and they brought in a couple of transfer edge guys, and Check Fall's probably the best one of them. He's got an NFL body, and he's probably going to be more of a passing down guy, but he seems to be able to get after it really well. And Ryan McCulloch was a true freshman that surprised a lot of people by making an impact last year late in the season when he had a chance, and he's continued to develop and get bigger too. So between those two elements, increased depth on the edge, and being able to play a little bit more of an aggressive style of pass rush, I think that they should be better on the pass rush. I don't think they're going to be elite, but instead of being, bottom of the pack in the conference, maybe that puts them in the middle or somewhere in that range, which would definitely help a lot.
Joe, and so is Justin Wilcox under any increased pressure this season to demonstrate overall team improvement in terms of conference record, overall record, and or bowl quality?
Well, he should be. I mean, they haven't had a winning conference record since he's been there, and that's not something that he can easily live with, and neither can or should fans. In terms of, does he feel the heat? I don't know. I mean, he's frustrated himself, and I don't know that external pressures are going to make him feel any more pressure. But when you have a contract like he does, where the buyout's still really large, how hot is hot? I'm not sure. It would, if they didn't get the job done this year and they needed to make a change, I just don't think the resources are there for it. But he has definitely put a lot of pressure on himself. I can say though that he seems to be more comfortable and confident heading into this season. You can kind of see it in his interviews and just talking with him. I feel like he feels like he has more parts to get the job done this year. So that's encouraging. I'm just really anxious to see how it all plays out.
So Tom has a question, and I'm going to ask what may be a stupid question as kind of part of it. Tom wants to know, are there any major rule changes this year? And my part that I should know is, the NFL is changed their kickoff process, for lack of a better term. Is that going to be is that in college as well? Oh, you're muted again, Jim.
Sorry about that.
You either have camera
Yep.
or audio, one or the other.
Yeah, I guess so. Sorry about that. It's because I'm in my car. I'm halfway to a concert. I'm on Treasure Island, and I can't. When I guess if maybe I walked out of my car, you could see both. I don't know. Sorry about this, guys.
That's all right.
But I don't know about rule changes, honestly. If there's been a change that's going to impact the game, it slid by me without me noticing it.
Mhm. And is college ball affected by the new kickoff, or are we going to be our standard kickoff process?
I don't know of any changes in the kickoff. That doesn't mean there's no changes, but I don't know of any.
Okay, great.
They're regular kickoff still.
Okay, good.
Only rule change that I know of, and that's just from watching week 0, is the implementation of the 2-minute warning on the first half and second half.
Okay. All right.
So essentially a free timeout.
All right, good. Okay, good. Thanks. Lisa wants to know, is Jaden Ott a potential candidate for the Heisman? You're okay. You're all right.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we got you now.
I tried getting out of the car to see if I can get video, but no luck. Yes, he definitely is. He's considered one of the better backs in the country. I think he has the offense behind him to be able to take the pressure off. I mean, put the pressure on the defense where they can't key on him. I think their passing game has the potential to be better than we've seen in at least 5 years. So whenever you have a chance to open up defenses where they can't stack the box and you have a talent like him, that's a recipe for success. I think he's going to have a real good season if he can stay healthy, and he's really taking care of his body. They're being careful with him in fall camp, so he's coming into the season 100% and ready to go. So yeah, I expect him to have a push.
So Leslie would like to know who is going to be not playing this Saturday due to injuries.
They haven't announced anybody, so if they don't announce it, I can't announce it. The only one I can tell you for sure is Vadakani.
Right. And Liz, would like to know, what's the average NIL payment per player for Cal, and how does that compare to the other ACC teams?
There's no average per player. Certain guys get a lot more money. Jaden Ott's at the top of the pack. Merriweather has a real good NIL deal. One of the biggest NIL deals is Wyckoff, one of the offensive linemen, and he needs to earn it because he's not starting right now. He's a primary backup at center and guard. But some of the players are getting fairly minimal NIL. It just really depends on a combination of, were they a portal transfer, were they highly recruited prep, how productive have they been so far, have they asked for more money? There's just a lot of different elements that go into it.
So Paul's asking, with a new offensive coordinator, how has our offensive scheming and play calling changed?
Well, one thing that the receivers consistently have said is that Blesh says, throw the blank ball down the field. He really believes in big plays. He really believes in stretching the defense instead of dinking and dunking their way down the field. And I think they have the personnel to do it. They're not as healthy at receiver as they are going to be at some point this year. So we may not see complete evidence of that in the beginning, but we will definitely see it this season. So it's a little bit more wide open of an offense, and both the running backs and the receivers have said they really like the way that he coaches offense, because he just understands how all the pieces work together so much more than a typical offensive coordinator would, because he's been involved in so many elements of offensive coaching over the years. So more wide open. They stretched their points per game to 30 points a game this last year, which is about a 6 or 7 point improvement. And I'd expect to see another 4 or 5 points or more added to that.
So Rick's question is, how is Coach Wilcox adjusting his coaching style and metrics for the current era of college football?
Well, he first of all recognized the need for the portal. In the beginning, they didn't really get very aggressive with it, and last year was the first year they were more aggressive, and they saw it paid dividends, and they were even more aggressive this past off season. So that's one thing that has changed a lot. He's a loyal person. He doesn't. He's not a ruthless coach like Deion Sanders, who comes in the first day and tells the players to pack your bags. But he does realize that non-productive guys, they're taking spots that need to be filled with productive guys. And you'll notice that you don't see guys tweeting out about how they were done wrong by the Cal program. It's a very relational program. So if guys move on, it's sort of a mutual decision. But that's one of the biggest changes I think we've seen. And he's realized the need for as many elite athletes as possible, as much speed as possible, that they can't be as cautious on defense, that they needed to have the right types of guys to play a more aggressive defense without getting burned by trying to be too aggressive when they didn't have the personnel for it. So those are the primary ways I think that we've seen him adjust to the times.
Got a question from Dwayne. Why does Coach Wilcox still not hire a special teams coach? Is it money or some other reason? Our return game has been almost non-existent for years, excepting Ott's return against UCLA.
Well, it's a good question. They've used the slots for inside and outside linebacker and 2 DB coaches instead of eliminating one of those and having a special teams guy. With the rules now, with extra non-staff assistants being able to play on the field roles, it's helped because you've got Ryan Longwell out there directly working with the kickers on a regular basis. That makes a big difference. But in terms of how they're approaching coverage and blocking, not really sure with that. It's been a collaborative effort, and it hasn't worked so well in the past. And that's one of those things where the kicking is going to be better and the returns are going to be better because they've got the personnel for that. But is the coverage going to be better? I'm not sure about that. That's a TBD because we don't really see that in practice.
Okay. So Garth put into chat that there is a 2-minute warning now. And excuse me. Joe has also put into chat a link to the 2024 NCAA football rule changes. So thanks for looking that up. So all the questions I have in chat. Now I noticed, Les, you were off of mute. Did you have a question?
No, I passed. I think I heard something.
Oh, okay.
Gary, I had a question.
But yeah, Greg's going crazy here, waving his hand all over the place. So that tells me he might have a question for you.
I have a question. Yeah. Jim, you mentioned a few times in passing about Florida State, and probably a lot of people watched them over the weekend since there were only a couple of games on. I watched them. A little bizarre. They were over in London, but did you have since we have them in game 3, any surprises for you? Did they look about what you expected, or a little weaker, a little stronger?
Yeah, it was kind of a surprise for me. I thought their lines would be better. Neither the offensive line or the defensive line looked particularly strong, and Ugalele was not very good. I think
Right.
we saw the best of him when Oregon State played us last year, but he had, believe it or not, probably some better weapons at his disposal, and he had a line that was blocking better for him. And I think we're seeing him play more like he did when he was at Clemson versus Oregon State. So they seem to be vulnerable, but some of that may be new talent gelling too, because they're not short on talent, that's for sure. And sometimes early in the season, those guys don't come together. And I think you probably have a lot more egos that you're dealing with there. It's probably not as seamless a transition melding together all these new guys as it is at Cal. So that could have something to do with it too. But it's still good to catch them early in the season, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Jim?
Gary, I asked a question.
Okay. I thought you just said you didn't have a question, Les.
I was just thinking about Jim. Are there any uniform changes contemplated for Cal?
Yeah, there is a new uniform. It's sort of a subtle change. It's a gold and blue circular stripe on the sleeves, and the Sather stripe on the pants is gone, and it's a blue and gold and white stripe. I like it a lot. It's a throwback, and I'm going to be really pumped to see them come out in the jersey this year. It's going to look familiar, but a little bit more of a retro clean look than they've had recently.
We're not going to have 11 helmets like Oregon.
No, that's not going to happen. And I don't think we'll see any white ones, even though they like to use it for recruiting purposes. We will see the 70s Roth helmets on occasion. I believe the gold helmets with the blue block C, and I love those too.
Mhm.
We will not see the standard Joe Roth throwback this year. Nike's weaseling us again and not producing it, but the road unis, especially the white ones, they look a lot like the Roth road throwback unis, so that's good.
Yeah, Jim, I got a couple more questions. Larry is going to be at the Pitt game. Do you have any prediction for that one?
For the Pitt game?
Yeah.
I don't think the program looks very good either on offense or defense. So, even though they've had some good teams recently, they didn't last year. And unless they're going to surprise some people this year, that would be kind of a disaster loss. I'd expect a win out of that one.
All right, let's hope so. And Garth is asking, will there be a Joe Roth game now? And if so, who's going to be the opponent?
I don't think so. They were trying to figure it out. And if they don't have a Roth jersey, I don't think they're going to do a Roth game. I'm hoping that's something they're going to bring back when Nike gives us the uniforms, which I hope they at some point do, but they're not this year.
Yeah. And okay, yeah, Leslie had the same question. Yeah. Okay, any last questions for Jim? All right, well,
I just came on.
oh,
Well, we're supposed to be playing again, I guess, UCLA next year as non-conference, and seems to me Cal could really get on Nike to bring it back for that. I mean, it was always USC or UCLA.
It would make sense if they do. There's been no word about it. Nike hasn't agreed to anything yet, but
Yeah, although I think that game might be down in the Coliseum, so I don't know how that.
yeah, it might be. Actually, I don't think so, because I think Oregon State's on the road next year. I don't think they'll play both UCLA and Oregon on the road.
They think it'll be Cal. Good.
I think so.
and Leslie had a really good point that she put in chat here, is you do not need a jersey to recognize Joe Roth.
True. I guess you would just have to come up with some type of formula that made sense, where you're not just throwing it out in some random game.
Yeah.
If I may, Gary, I'd like to give a big huzzah for the job Jim does as Moraga Bear on the Bear Insider. The premium board where I go is well worth the annual dues. We really get a lot of great commentary there. So
Thanks, I appreciate that. And our publisher Greg Richardson does a great job of keeping people informed too. He's a major donor, so he has access to a lot of information that a lot of people don't. So between the two of us tag teaming, I'd like to think that we definitely give people their money's worth if they're more than just casual fans.
by the way, Jim, I'm Bare Bones on there.
Oh, okay, great. We have a lot of lurkers, so sometimes there's not always a handle attached to a name.
Mhm.
I think the UCLA games start in 2026, and I think there's 4 of them in a row, and they're home and home, I think, over 4 years.
Okay. If it's 2026 that it starts, then I'm not sure when the first one would be, whether it be home or road. I know if it was 25, it would definitely be home, because there's no way they're playing Oregon State and UCLA on the road in the same season.
Right.
Jim, I got one more question.
Yeah.
I read someplace that it'll be at least 5 years minimum before there's any talk of restoration of the Pac-12 or the conference.
I don't think the Pac-12 really has any hope of coming back unless it's going to be without a lot of good teams, and then it's just another version of Mountain West in most people's eyes, which would also involve very little TV money. I don't think the big programs are going to be left out of whatever the new arrangement is with TV, whether it's a 30 team super conference or 50 team super league. I don't think the top end former Pac-12 teams are going to be left out of that. So I just don't see the Pac-12 coming back as it was previously constituted. I see very little chance of that.
Yeah, last year, before the North Texas game, when we were in Dallas at the event that the athletic department put on, I talked to Beth Vetch at the athletic department for a few minutes, and that was the day. That very day was the day that we got into the ACC, that it became official, and so there was a lot of conversation about that. And one of her comments was, and I think she's absolutely right, is that this conference realignment, it's far from over. That it's going to be a number of years that this stuff is going to be going on, and there's going to be shifts, and how long we're in the ACC is a question mark. So,
given the realignment, is it being talked about at all about getting rid of Knowlton? He's just been terrible.
Jim, do you have any insight on that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, has there been any talk about replacing Jim Knowlton?
Yeah, a lot of talk. Whether it'll happen, I don't know. I don't really have much insight on that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jim, as always, this has been great. I mean, thank you for continuing to join us every year. And thanks for all of the great reporting that you do throughout the year, and the great information. So I want to thank you for being here, Alex, for his report in the athletics, and I know Bob has dropped off here, but thank Bob Dunning for all of his insights. I think he did a really good job on filling us in on the Aggies. And with that, again, thanks to everybody for being here. This is great. I mean, we've had people, from the Bay Area. We have people, Garth is here from Colorado. So that's one real advantage of having the Zoom meetings over the in-person. As much as I miss the in-person ones, is that a lot more people can join us. So thank you all for being here. We had a really good turnout. We had I think around 50 people in on this, so that was great. And keep an eye out on your email for our other events. They've just been really good. We had our new student welcome party last month. We had almost 90 people at that. It was just fantastic. So we're going to have a lot of different events going on. So keep an eye out for those. And again, donations are always welcome. And
Gary?
yes. Mm-hmm.
I have something before we go. It's not college football, it's high school football, but was everybody aware of that blowout win of Folsom over perennial power Long Beach Poly? They played them Friday and they beat them like 66-23.
Wow.
Long Beach Poly is always tough. They're great players come out of it. We got, well, I think that's where Deshaun Jackson came from, was Long Beach.
I think that's right.
But
yeah.
I mean, God, Folsom was unbelievable.
Wow. It's like nice. I used to have the locals win.
Yeah, really. Now, if we can just get some of their players to count.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
They all go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
All right. Well, everybody, again, thanks for being here, and we'll see you on October 2nd for Jim Knowlton, and find out more on that. So just keep an eye for our events, and thanks for being here. And with that, I'll go ahead and say good night.
Thanks, Gary. Go Bears.
Thanks, everybody. Go Bears.
Go
We'll
Bears.
see you all on Saturday,
Yep.
and hope to see you in Auburn.
Yep.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks
Okay,
for
thank you.
Gary.
Thanks, Jim.